Prejudice happens by quickly deciding what you think without questioning your thoughts. We intuitively conclude that we understand everything that we need to know about a subject, a thing, or a person, and decide that it is bad, and then we shut ourselves off from new sources. It's the perfect example of a fixed mindset, hence a brilliant thing to discuss here on the Growth Mindset podcast. I'm your host, Sam Webster Harris, and today we're really digging into why prejudice is so hard to notice, how it gets done and where it happens in so many different places, where this might impact us in health, communication, our lives, and what role does ego play, and what we can do going forwards to make ourselves more aware of the prejudices that we do not notice. But before we jump into it, just a quick shout out to our sponsors today. The Growth Mindset is proudly sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs. Yes, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. I've generally found it the simplest way to hire for my own businesses because it's so easy to create a post and get it in front of the right people. You have simple tools like screening questions that make it easy to focus on the right candidates with just the perfect skills and experience. As we all know, the right team member with a good mindset and a culture fit is invaluable for your business, so you want to be exposed to the best people possible. Small businesses consistently rate LinkedIn Jobs the number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So remember that LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster and for free. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/growth. That's linkedin.com/growth, GROWTH. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So, starting at the start, why is prejudice so hard to notice? Well, we think that our opinions are part of our inherent tastes, our interests, and our moral values. It feels like they're just part of our genetics. They're part of us. Well, the opposite is true. Our tastes, our interests, our moral values are completely constructed due to our opinions. And those opinions that we have are often not our own opinions. Our opinions are things that are given to us by society and by our ego. These opinions help guide us to satisfy an underlying need that we have to feel appreciated and accepted by a community that we value. Whether a specific type of music or fashion or food appeals to you might not be something you were actually born with to like, but will be a part of how you grew up. The things that you like come with an expectation of the things that you will dislike. Judging what you think of something without being open to new information stifles the ability to ever see the absolute truth. But the problem here is that we think we're already seeing the truth. The knowledge that we have that works today feels as reliable as the fact that gravity today will be as strong tomorrow. It's impossible to not think what you're thinking because then you wouldn't be thinking it. You can't ever see when you're wrong because if you did, you wouldn't think that you were being wrong. Like you can't ever see when you're being stupid or when you're being wrong because you don't think you're doing something stupid or wrong at the moment that you're doing it. So let's go a bit more into how prejudice happens. In 1955, 37,000 Americans died in car accidents. That's 6 times more people than die today, adjusted for the amount of miles driven each year. And in 1955, this was the year that Ford offered seatbelts as an upgrade in all their car models. It was $27, which is about $200 in today's value. Now, seatbelts had been proven to increase survival rates by 70%. Yet, despite this fact, only 2% of people buying cars chose to upgrade to have seatbelts. That means that 98% of people buying a car chose to risk their lives. They chose to risk the lives of their children, and they chose to risk the lives of their partners, despite the data in front of them. Amazingly, by 1980, only 15% of cars had seatbelts, and it was in December 1984 when New York became the first state to require seatbelts to be worn. Despite this progress, it still took until early 2000s for more than 80% of the cars on the road to have a seatbelt. And in fact, New Hampshire is now the only state in America that does not have a law requiring you to wear a seatbelt. And now what this shows is that social norms prevent change. As Morgan Housel states, the author of Psychology of Money, the strongest urge in the world is to keep doing things as you've always done them. And what's insane about this story is that the urge to do things as you've always done them is stronger than the urge to survive. People just hate being told that they've been doing things wrong all along. And one of the other things that blocks change and keeps us blind to our prejudice is that we have no idea what life could be like if it was different. As I spend more time working with the growth mindset and talking with people going through change, one of the most major barriers to change is the fact that we lack awareness of what change would be like. There's nothing in our working knowledge to represent the potential new feeling that we might be seeking. As humans, we perceive risks and problems of a change much more than we do the ambiguous unknown benefits. So take, for example, health. You can't understand whether you like exercising or not without first being healthy enough to do it well. If you try to run for 15 minutes and it feels like you're going to die and you're just wheezing and like everything is awful, you don't know how good it might feel to be fit. Explaining what it's like to someone to run for over an hour and feel full of energy whilst driven by like a delightful runner's high with some good music and some stunning views, it's kind of like trying to explain the color red to a blind person. Yet, if you're trying to start running, it's so easy to imagine the problems like blisters, expensive trainers, getting a stitch, having painful legs, losing time from your day, looking really red and sweaty and pathetic. And those are all negative things that you can feel very concretely and you know what they're like. You don't know what it's like to feel great because you have no idea what that type of great thing feels like. Now, this does mean that it's impossible for someone to say that all sports are not for them without trying all sports. What's interesting here is that it's impossible for someone to say that all sports just aren't for them without having tried all sports, because baseball is different to ballet and jiu-jitsu is different to juggling. Now, it isn't easy to become fit and it isn't easy to try the thousands of potential sports available, but without trying it, any negative idea that you have about exercise is just an unquestioned prejudice. Another blinding bias we can have is in communication. As babies, we learn to cry to get attention. We have no words to describe our emotions. As children, we still cry to get attention, but we'll also learn that maybe we can get angry when things don't get our way, and that's something we can do to exert power. Finally, as adults, we think that we've grown up because we stop crying for attention. Yet, if we deal with some of our problems by getting angry, we haven't learned to explain our feelings or the current injustice in a way that solves it. Instead, by getting angry, you're still letting your emotions control you to try and get attention and use your tantrums to exert power. You simply haven't improved your ability to argue and attract respect in a situation. Now, if you can draw people towards you to willingly listen to you and agree with your ideas in the moments when you're stressed, it's a wonderful, sustainable form of power. And most people have no working knowledge of what that feels like. Often people think that their ability to act out of anger is just of moral importance to them. It's really natural to resist the idea of not being angry. But that's just another prejudiced opinion that people haven't questioned. It's just something intuitive to do because you've always done it. And you deny yourself the idea that perhaps getting angry is the wrong option in many of the scenarios. Now, change is not always easy and it's not always obvious, but if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting the same results. And using anger to exert power is a very unsustainable form of getting what you want. Whereas getting people to understand your own feelings and believe what you're thinking and respect you is a much harder but much more sustainable form of power and would really improve people's mental health. Okay, and now onto another bias that comes up with where people live. Many Americans have never left their country yet believe it is the best country in the world. But how can they ever know? As a non-American myself, it's easy for me to notice some of the flaws: the massive inequality, the expensive education, the more expensive healthcare, the awful public transport, raging gun violence, and a nation that's just so politically divided that basically half the people you meet will hate you based on your interests. But one of the problems for Americans is that in many metrics, it is undeniably the best country in the world. It has the biggest entertainment and tech industries, the largest economy, it has every form of nature you could imagine. And this does perhaps make the idea that America is the best country in the world, in general, just so much more believable without questioning it. Ultimately, whatever country you're in, you need to leave your country to understand how good or bad it is. There's no real ability to get perspective from within your own bubble. Now, I certainly don't believe that England is the best country in the world, In fact, I used to hate England. I could only list its problems. I've now lived in 6 different countries and see both the appeal and the problems within the UK and England. And for anyone, it's just very dangerous to quickly make strong conclusions about big life decisions and where to live, what is a good career, how much money you might need, and just the other things that you need in life really require some perspective before you can actually judge them. Imagine if you had to marry the first partner that you slightly fancied without really having a chance to date different people, without the chance to learn what to expect from a good partner through experiences. How many people will be stuck in toxic relationships that aren't for them? Yet we accept our career, we accept our country, we accept our lifestyle without realizing how toxic our current situation might be for us. This is due to the fact that we rely on initial opinions and prejudice that get formed about our lifestyle, our health, our career, our hometown, and our hobbies, and that even influences the way that we experience emotions. So what I think is really interesting here is the concept of good taste and how to develop good taste, because perhaps one of the most important drivers of success is essentially good taste. Who you spend time with, what you spend time doing, are driven by taste. And if you have good taste, you will make good decisions in life. Yet most people don't work on improving their taste for 2 reasons. Ego. Everyone thinks they already have good taste, and fixed mindset. They think that their tastes and their interests are something they are born with. And so if we look into ego, we don't question our tastes because we think that they are the best. As mentioned earlier, we often haven't even found experiences for which to grade our taste against. We haven't tried all the different sports. We haven't lived in different countries. So the idea that we are currently deluded and don't know anything about taste just doesn't sit well with our ego. Our ego needs to believe that we are the wise master of our life who made sensible decisions for sensible reasons. And this blinds us to the fact that actually we really don't know that much. And then the second issue of having a fixed mindset is that we think that our taste is mostly like a fixed thing. It's just our preferences. It's what we like and it's what we don't like. Whilst we think that our opinions could of course be changeable. Yet we really fail to change our opinions on things like our taste because we think we can't change our taste. Whereas when you look at the reality of taste and opinions, your taste is actually much more flexible than you realize. And it's your opinions that are things that you really have to work hard on and you don't change as much as you think you do. Rick Rubin is one of the most successful music producers of all time, working with artists such as Eminem, Lady Gaga, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, The Strokes, Adele, Johnny Cash, to name a few, Slayer. Anyway, he doesn't claim to have any special abilities with music or technology and says that his main talent is just respecting his taste. He says that I never decide if an idea is good or bad until I've tried it. So much of what gets in the way of things being good is thinking that we already know what is good. So the more that we can remove any baggage that we're carrying with us and just be in the moment, use our ears, pay attention to what's happening, and just listen to the inner voice that directs us, the better. Now, Rick Rubin is a legend, so you should probably listen to his advice. And then when thinking about fixed mindset and how getting into a growth mindset, the conversation leads into talent versus skill. The growth mindset reminds us, of course, that our inherent talent does not represent our potential skills. An initial talent that we have might be a determination of how much skill you could acquire or how quickly you might acquire it. However, ultimately, how much skill you have is related to the work that you do. Michael Jordan was dropped from his youth basketball team because his talent wasn't good enough. He went on to become one of the most skilled players in the world and perhaps one of the best athletes of all time due to his hard work and dedication and practice. And at the end of it, he was celebrated for his incredible gift and talent, the same gift and talent that got him dropped from his basketball team because he wasn't good enough. So this reminds us that we can really change our story and that our talent and our tastes are very flexible things that we can bend through work and dedication. And ultimately, we should be thinking about how we can pursue good taste. If we fall into fixed mindset beliefs, we keep our fixed opinions and our fixed tastes. If we fall into fixed mindset beliefs, we keep our fixed opinions and our fixed tastes. But just like our skills that can be improved through hard work, we can improve our opinions through the act of novel experiences. Again, leaning into some of Rick Rubin's work, he says that to vary your inspiration, consider varying your inputs. Turn the sound off to watch a film. Listen to the same song on repeat. Read only the first word of each sentence in a short story. Arrange stones by size or color. Learn to lucid dream. Break habits. Look for differences and notice connections. He is just a crazy individual who's just made it his life's work to break down the prejudices in his head or the concept of how something should be, and that allows him to see opportunities to do things that others have not done. And when you think about the fact that your life is so short, it makes sense to try and understand as much as possible and to see the many different ways that you can see the world. So that way you can make an informed decision on how to live. And when we can finally stop thinking that we know everything and stop having quite so much prejudice to the way everything should be or the way our lives should be, only then can we start to build at least some awareness of the reality of the world and stop being so lost in our own opinions. Now, ego, awareness, and prejudice is just such a massive topic that I love diving into. If you found this interesting, I'm happy to talk about it a lot more. So let me know in the comments. And I do read all your comments, whether this is Spotify or YouTube or sending me an email. Thanks for anyone that ever gets in touch. If this episode made you think, gave you some breakthroughs, please share it with a friend who you think would appreciate it as well. And of course, as I am a podcaster, we do have this generic request where we like people to give us positive reviews on places like Spotify or Apple, or liking our videos on YouTube, or maybe subscribing there. Well, I am slightly a generic individual. Please don't be prejudiced against me for being one of those podcasters that says that because, just trying to make a living, and that would be nice. And finally, on that, remember that life is to be enjoyed, and that means enjoying today. Enjoyment is not something to start on some point in the future. It's a constant part of your life and will happen whilst you're living your life, which means whilst living today. So be kind to yourself, and whilst you're at it, be kind to someone else too. And that might mean leaving me a good review. Thanks.